sermon is about that gospel reading. Now, when you hear in the gospel reading today about that drunken, abusive, violent servant, the reaction of many of us is, that's not me. See, I would never do that. But if the majority of us here could say, that doesn't apply to me, then what was the point of Jesus telling this parable? Because Jesus usually knows me and my sinful condition far better than I do. So maybe it's important for us to look a little more closely at this parable and see what similarities there might be between me and that guy, and what Jesus is trying to teach us here. Today we are beginning a short three Sunday sermon series on the parables of Jesus as they relate to our possessions, or to what we might think of as our possessions. Some time ago, when our oldest child was about 18, a member of this congregation said to us, I believe that every kid should learn to drive a stick shift, Pastor. And your cars are all automatics. So I've got this 5-speed Saab that I'm not using right now. How about if I loan it to you for a month or two until your child learns how to drive it? And I said, sure. And so Nicholas loved driving a stick shift, and when he got his first car, he made sure he got a stick shift because he learned to love it. But what if we forgot that car was on loan to us? What if we started to just assume it was kind of ours now? What might we have done? We might have customized it a little bit. We might have sold off the old van. We might have treated it roughly rather than gently, like something that needed to be returned. Many of you have probably seen cars that looked a little bit more like rolling garbage pits than like automobiles. And maybe those people said, well, that's just a kid's car, or I never wear my good clothes in that car, it's too sticky, or whatever, you know. But what if we did that to the car and then gave it back to the guy who loaned it to us? What do you think his reaction would have been? I think he might have said, what? I am never, ever loaning you another car after what I did for you. He might have said something like, you have lost my trust as a friend. You just blew it right there. I'm getting that car detailed, and I am sending you the bill because there is no accountability for that. See, I just told you a parable with the same point as the parable that Jesus just told you. And the first main point of the three is that you don't have a title to anything that you might think of as really yours at this point. It all belongs to God. Look at how he started the parable. Jesus said, who then is the faithful and wise servant? That's us, the servant. In some translations it says slave, because it's what we are. We were bought with a price, very high price. We're not our own anymore, and we live to serve God. And the stuff that we have, not really ours, it belongs to the master, and we're just managing it for him until he returns, until he comes back. This is a profoundly obvious thing if we think about the Bible verse where Job says, we were born naked into this world, and we are not taking anything out of this world either when we die. It's just ours for a brief period of time while we're here to manage, to use, that sort of thing. Like the car that was loaned for us. But it's not natural to see things that way because we work hard for what we have, and we decide what we want to have, and we set goals, and we take care of things, you know, and it sure feels like it is ours. But someday the master is going to come back, and he's going to sit down with us, and he's going to say, okay, how did you do as my servant? And the main criteria for the decision will be, did you treat stuff as if it was yours, or as if you were managing it for me because it's really mine? A couple weeks ago, I was at a pie auction for raising funds for the preschool playground that's out there. And while I was at the pie auction, I saw somebody pay $50 one slice of pie. Now granted, it was French silk. But $50? If that were my $50 in my pocket, you know what my brain would be thinking? It would be thinking, there are better ways to spend $50. I can get my chocolate fix in much better ways than using it to buy just one slice of pie. But if I thought this was God's $50, well, it changes it a little bit. And if I thought that God maybe wanted some young families blessed by having a new playground out there, and I got a slice of pie besides, then maybe that was the exact thing to do with that bill, right? So here's the question that I think everybody needs to answer. No, it's not who really owns everything. That's too easy. If I ask you that question, you'd all get it right, even though we all fail miserably from time to time at living it out, though we know the answer and what it should be. No, here's the answer here's the question I want you to think about. What is your ultimate financial goal in life? That's a profound question. At the end of it all, what is your ultimate financial goal? I would say there are probably different answers bouncing around in heads right now. One might be, I want to retire comfortably. One person might be saying, I want to travel and visit my kids. One might say, I want to give my kids a good start so that they're secure in life, in where their life is headed and can use their talents. Another person might say, I want to be out of debt for once. Another person might say, I want to be financially independent. That's what I want. Retire at 35 or whatever, you know. What is your ultimate financial goal? What do you think of this as one? To use my money for God. That sounds an awful lot like the point of the parable that Jesus just said, didn't it? And yet, when they did a survey of just Christians, and they had different answers that you could check, to use my money for God ranked number 6 of the answers that were picked. You want to know what number 1 was? Number 1 among just Christians was to make myself happy. That sounds frighteningly similar to that servant that we were just talking about, right? And how did it end up for him? Let's see. First, he was cut in pieces, and then he was assigned a place with the hypocrites, which are people that say they follow God but actually don't. And then he was thrown out into the utter darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. I don't think Jesus could make it any more obvious than that's the wrong answer, even though that's the one that he probably would have chosen. So someday when you sit down with God, let's imagine right now God sits down with you and he's going to talk about, well, how are you doing right now with this question? Do you think he would say, well done, good and faithful servant, you are using what I have given you like it's mine and you're managing it for me? Or would he say, it's like mostly it's to make yourself happy. Don't you know that's not how you get happy? How did you so miss what I mean so obvious? That's the first point of the parable. God owns it all and we just manage it. Second point of this parable, the end is coming, so don't act like it's a long way off or you won't be ready. It's a common theme in the parables. I mean, so often it's like the king or the master, whoever he is a long way off, and the servants are thinking, wow, he's a long time coming back. He's a long time coming back. He's a long time coming back. And then suddenly he is there. And some are ready, and some are not. Common theme in the parables. And the misperception is that the end is a long way away. And that's what got this servant in trouble, isn't it? I mean, didn't he start out his wrong path by saying, my master is staying away a long time? It reminds me of an old story about the devil who was trying to ask his demons for ideas on how to lead people astray. And one came up to him and said, I know what I'll do. I'll lie, and I will tell people that there is no God. And the devil said, some people will believe that, but most people know deep down that there is a God. So another demon comes up and he says, I know. I'll tell people that there is no hell. It's kind of a popular one today. But the devil said, some people will believe that, but most people know deep down that they have a conscience and they are accountable for their life. So another demon came up and said, I know, I'll tell people that there is no hurry. And the devil said, I like that one. Even believers will be led astray by that one. Because if you say to yourself, I'm young, I got to experience life, I got time to get serious with God later, that starts you on a wrong path, and you don't know that you'll get back on the right one, or whether it will be derailed, for your lifetime. The guy in the parable starts out by saying, my master is a long time away, and that leads him into all kinds of trouble. Because the end is coming. But that's not bad news for those who belong to God, is it? Jesus begins his parable by saying this. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household, to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. It will be good for that servant. That's the same word Jesus used in the Beatitudes when he said, blessed or happy are you when these things happen. It's the path to the good life, according to Jesus, and to the extremely good life when the master returns. Because what's going to happen then? The book of Revelation paints this imagery. It says, when the master returns, his faithful servants will eat from the tree of life. They will receive the crown of righteousness and the crown of life. They will be covered over with garments of righteousness that Christ won at the cross, that covers over all of our sins. We will have life in the New Jerusalem, the city of God, where there is no more weeping or crying or sorrow or pain at all. And we'll drink from the water of life. And however literally you want to take these things, they all point to the fact that it is going to be very, very good for God's faithful servants when he returns. And in fact, Jesus even expands the thought here in the parable. He begins, it's almost mind-blowing. He says, truly I say to you, which means, listen to this, everybody. This is important. When the master returns, he will put that faithful servant in charge of all his possessions. What does God own? Everything that you ever can think of and far more. And I don't know how this is going to work out, how multiple people can be in charge together of all God's possessions, unless we all think the same, or maybe God's possessions are so vast that in all eternity we can be in charge of everything we could ever think of and never overlap with anybody else. I have no idea, but the point is not how. The point is, it's going to be far beyond our comprehension how good it will be for the faithful servants when Christ returns. And if you believe that, then what's the best way to live now? I think it's generously, I think it is faithfully, I think it is with thanksgiving, I think it is joyfully, and I think it is managing all the things that we have as belonging to God. Managing means budgeting, which is a dirty word to some people, but it also means that in our managing, we put God first. The servant in the parable didn't do that at all. Instead, it says, but suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, my master is staying away a long time, and then he begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunkards. He beat the other servants. If you put yourself first as most important in this world, you will mistreat others. You will cheat them, or you will make sure you get the better part of the deal, or you will make sure that the best work that they do is accredited to you, or you will in some way make use of them for your own benefit. And it will show and other people will feel it. But Jesus shows us the other way. He puts us first instead of himself, to the point where he would even go to the cross to bear our sin and to bear all of our shame and everything, to do away with it there. And if you trust the heart of God who would do that for you, and if you trust his message of how good it will be for the faithful servant when he returns, having that, I think we can live freely and thankfully and faithfully with what God has given us here. If not, you're going to treat other people poorly. And you probably won't be happy. And you probably won't be as loved a person as you would want to be because you don't treat people well. When I was a vicar in Southern California, where Eden's from, there was an old lady in the church. It was one of my shut-ins that I visited. And in her youth, she had cleaned house for a very important silver screen star who thought she was the center of the universe. And this star had a bathroom remodeled. And when it was done, she said to the plumber, "Did you use it?" And the plumber said, "What?" And she said, "The toilet, did you use it?" And he said, "Well, I had to see that it worked, and I had to, yes, I used it." And she said, "Rip it out and bring me a fresh one, like I paid for it, brand new." I said, "Okay." So he takes out the toilet, takes it off to his truck, and he drives off. Comes back and installs a new toilet, and when he's done with that, my shut-in said to him, "Did you really replace that with a brand new one?" And he said, "Nah, I just gave it a ride in my truck around town for a while and came back and installed the same one. How's she gonna know?" You don't have the respect of other people if you treat other people like that, you know? If you think you're the center of everything, like that other servant. She had all the money she wanted, but I really don't think she was all that happy. She didn't act like it. Another problem, and the third, with that wicked servant, and the third point of this parable is, you're never going to be happy if what you want is more. Because if you think, "Oh, if I had that, then I'd be happy," you'll get there maybe, and you'll find, "Oh, I'm not really happy, but now what I really want is that." And it'll just keep going and going and going, and you'll never be happy by wanting what you don't have. The way to happiness is to be content with what you've been given here and now by God. And if you have that, then life becomes kind of an adventure with God to say, "Okay, what is it you want for me with what you've given me right here and right now?" On the other hand, if I always want more to be happy, we run into what some people have called the paradox of prosperity. And what that tries to explain is, why is it that there are so many people in the poorest parts of the world who are happier than so many people in the richest parts of the world? And they've come up with kind of an explanation that explains that, and also explains why vacations are so great. When you just get away from everything and live out of a suitcase and all your responsibilities are behind you, and you can just live in the moment and enjoy right here and right now, even though you didn't really bring very much with you. Why is that? And what they say is that the more you have, the more cares and responsibilities, the more chores, the more tasks, the more responsibilities and winterizing and upkeep and knowing where the warranty is and work on putting it away and organizing it. And pretty soon your life gets more and more full of all of these things rather than enjoying what God has given you here in the moment. So if the good life to you means more stuff, with it will come more stress, responsibilities, chores, all of that. And that's not the answer. On the other hand, listen to what God says in 1 Timothy chapter 6. And listen especially to the last word. St. Paul says to Timothy, who's a young pastor in a church, he says, "Instruct those who are rich in the present age." That's all of us here. Instruct those who are rich in the present age not to be arrogant or to set their hope on the uncertainty of wealth, but on God, who richly provides us with all things to enjoy. God gives us all good things to enjoy. That's where his heart is. He wants that for us. He gives us all good things to enjoy with thanksgiving rather than to set our hearts on what we don't have. He teaches us to be content with what he has provided, and to say, I am the servant of the Lord, and I am going to manage what God has given me to His glory. And when I do so, I'm going to treat people better because I'm going to give them their food at the proper time, just like the head servant there. I'm going to bless people with what they need, and I will enjoy it more, and life will be blessed both now and even more in the kingdom to come.